Hello friends, today we're going to make a circular saw jig that'll help us get perfect cuts every single time. Let's get started. And now literally, let's get started. I'm sure you can see that giant screen ticking. I'm going to attempt to build this entire thing without any sort of stopping and editing so you can see just how quick you can actually build a jig. So today I'm going to need my circular saw. It's a corded circular saw. I pretty much only use it on giant things of plywood almost once a year when I'm building the set for my wife's musical. I'm also going to use my drill and driver and some screws, a measuring tape, and I have here two very old pieces of wood. This was in the house when I came here. It looks like it's a piece of trim, and it is disgusting looking. I'm never going to use it really for anything. I also have this old board, and this was from a very old shelf that I knocked down. It's solid pine, and it's got some massive cracks. You can sort of see how it's splitting like this. I'm going to cut it so these cracks aren't going to be as pronounced, but it's a great piece of scrap. I really only want this for cutting across the 2x4, across a piece of plywood. So a plywood is 4 foot by 8 feet. So to begin, I'm going to measure this, and I'm going to measure it about, let's say, 3 inches longer than 4 feet, so 51 inches. And of course, I can't find my pencil. Haha! So this is the good end, let's say. I'll have to clear an end here, but 51 inches comes to right here. Putting a mark, and I'm going to begin by cutting this on my table saw. Start with my crosscut sled. Raise this up so that I'll make clearance and put on my protective equipment. You can see this actually broke up into a couple pieces right away. It's a piece of junk. Move this. And now, when I take the board and I put my circular saw up to it, what I want to do is put the blade against this and see how far into it I need to be. So as I'm working, it looks like I don't need this full 12 inches here. So I'm going to cut off just a few inches. Let's see. This is the bad side. I'm going to bring this down to 9 inches wide instead of 12. So, in fact, I don't need a pencil. I'm just going to take it to my table saw. Now the reason I'm cutting it down in size is because I want to plane this board. And my planer only has a 12-inch clearance. So, You know what? I'm second thought, I am going to use that cutoff. I'm going to plane both of these boards since they're already cut to length, and instead of using this, I'm going to use the cutoff. Let's get this out of the way for now. Like so. And then we'll bring it a bit planer. It's a big heavy one, aren't they all? We're just going to take maybe a 1/16 of an inch off of each side, and that'll be just fine. Your ears. Splendid. Now I need to move my table saw out of the way. Lower the blade, of course. That's one of the nice things about my rigid table saw. It's really easy to move. So now that the cutting is done, or some of the initial cutting at least, I can take my mask off. Working around so quickly to try to beat the clock almost takes the wind out of you. Give me a second to have a drink of water. Lovely. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue and screw this board on nearly to the end, leaving about 1.5 inches or 2 inches on one side. In fact, I think I'm going to, well, let's see, do I need to make this thinner? That's a good question. I don't think that I do. Let's see what it looks like with my saw. is I bring the gauge back to see exactly where this has to come flush. Right about there. And I put the board next to it. That only gives me about an inch. Now I want to save some room on this side for a clamping ability. Of course, I could just clamp right here, but then the motor is going to go along this board. So really, I want to rip this board down again, and I want to make it maybe 1.5 inches wide instead of the 3 inches that it is. So, that's a design element, right? Bring the table saw back in. It doesn't have to be in its normal spot. That's okay. I'll set it down though. Oh, it's backwards. That's cute. There we go. And let's take this down again. So we're at 3 inches now. I'm going to take that to, actually, let's say 1 3/4 of an inch. That over there, lower us the blade, disconnect, and move it away. See, that was nice and quick. Not too painful. Coming up on that 12-minute mark. Oh, you guys are troopers for holding in there. Okay. Now, here's where the fun part comes in. I'm going to attach this dangly cord. I'm going to attach this board to this board, and I see that I need a little bit of clearance, about to here, so I'm just going to roughly leave the board on. Can you see what I'm doing? The blade is going to rest against the side of the long board on the bottom, but not exactly. We're going to make a cut on this, so I'm going to have a true edge to work with as a guide moving forward. So here's where it sits now, and I'm going to just ever so slightly move this back. I'm talking 1 centimeter at most. Marking some lines. That's a very arbitrary mark for coming back. Now I don't care if it is perfect straight across, because right here I have the 1.5 inches or so of clamping space that I wanted, so I'm perfectly content. I don't even need to glue this down. I'm just going to screw it down. For those of you who are interested, I like to use these torque screws now that have the star bits on them. They just grip the wood so nicely, or grip the screws so nicely. Never have any stripping. So does it look pretty? Not necessarily. But that's okay. It's a jig that I take out once in a blue moon. I'm looking for function over form in this quick and dirty build. I'm using 1.25 inch screws because I've got 2 pieces of 3/4 inch wood, and I want to bury the top, but I don't want the bottom poking out. Otherwise, I usually use 1 5/8 inches. Just putting some screws in randomly across the length of the board. If you're OCD in your measurements and this is driving you nuts, I'm so sorry. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. Für meine deutsche Genossen und Genossinnen. Splendid. Move these over. Yep, didn't come through in the bottom. Superb. And this is my initial cut edge. Great. Now we're actually going to cut the end and make it a clear cut. So I'm going to grab the clamps. Oh, look at that clamp sitting over here. How convenient. It's almost like I planned it. And I'm just going to gently put this over the edge of my workshop because, you know, I don't need to cut my workbench. Yeah, I'll put my clamps like this. So I gotta move my And actually I can only clamp one end the way I have this, and that's fine. So now my butt's going to be in the way as I'm making this cut, but essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to run along. This is now a permanent fence that aligns itself with this. So as I make this cut, it's going to cut off maybe 1/2 inch of wood on this side, and then the cut that's left along this edge is a perfect straight line. So when I take it to a full sheet of plywood and I have a mark, I know I just line that mark up against this and run my circular saw up against it, and it'll be perfect. And now we're almost finished. So you know, if you don't have to plane any boards yourself, you'll be just fine. You'll be done in half the time. Got a laser. It's a shark with lasers. Any old Austin Powers fans? Yep, looks like that'll be fine. I'm going to move this cord just as a precaution. Not that much though, and make my cut. Did you catch my mistake? Instead of staying close to the board, I let the circular saw waver. So now this isn't a clean end. So I have to go back to it and make another cut for that perfect edge. That means I have to get in your way. Prima. So, let's see what we got. Let's see just how straight that edge is. Oh yeah. That's good. I know you can't tell, but that's a good edge. That's good. Good, good, good. Great. Perfect. So now you might be asking yourself, how come I made this 51 inches instead of making it 48 inches like the shorter end of a piece of plywood? The answer is because I want a piece of wood to go underneath here and to act almost as a T. So I can shove this up against the side of a piece of plywood, and I know that it will be at a perfect 90-degree angle. So essentially, say I want to cut 17 inches off of a piece of plywood, just as an example. All I have to do is mark 17 inches from one end, put this up, butt it up against the side of the piece of plywood, and it'll serve basically as a square. All I have to do is line it up to the 1/17-inch mark and clamp it and make my cut. So I'm going to need another piece of scrap wood, and I have to go get it. What do we got down here? That's nice. So this is a piece of scrap. Not a piece of crap, a piece of scrap. This piece of scrap was from, actually, when I made this. Can you see? Perfect. Oh, maybe you can't see. Can you see? Good. So I'm going to put this on the bottom here and make sure that it's at a 90-degree angle. I'm going to put it at this far end because over here I've got some splintering happening. Just a little bit. I should still be wearing my mask because there is a good amount of sawdust in the air. So using the cut that we just made, which happens to be on this side, I'm taking my triangle, lining it up against it, finding the perfect spot, and I am going to clamp it on here. Well, actually, before I clamp it on, you know, it doesn't need to be the entire width. So I'm going to cut off just a little bit of this so it doesn't hang over. More scrap. Lovely. Let's do the same thing as we did before. Bringing it almost to the edge. Done. I'm going to clamp it down. Nice and tight. Tight like a tiger. A lot of Austin Powers references in this video for some reason. I'm not entirely certain why. Just in one of those moods. Probably because I'm not editing this. You know, sometimes there comes a time in a YouTube creator's life that you need to try something different with your channel. And for me, I'm trying something different by making a ridiculously long video. We'll see if you watch the whole thing, or how much of this you skip. Please be sure to add your comments in the comment section below. Put 4 screws in. Probably could have spaced these better. Oh well. Poomsie poomsa. Dos más. Uno. Y. Dos. I know my lighting's not the best in here. That's why I'm standing behind this. You know, I believe for the holidays I might be getting myself a lapel mic so you'll be able to hear me better moving forward. And I think I might also be getting some more lighting for back here. So, fingers crossed, you might see me better next year. That is, if you're still watching. Cool. And you know what? I made a grand mistake. Well, actually, I suppose it's not that bad of a mistake. I put my clamp here on the wrong side. So this side is where my scroll saw goes, like this. And I was intending to put it on the very bottom here, but I put it on the top. And you know what? That's going to be fine. All I have to do is clip the plywood on one end instead of pushing it up on the other end, and we'll be set to go. And it turns out I have 49 inches. So it's going to have an inch overhang on a piece of plywood. And you know what? Because some clamps don't have the biggest neck, I'm going to take that down just a little bit on my saw. You know what? I don't have the cutting depth for that, so I'm not going to take it down on my saw. And with that, behold, we have an incredibly simple but effective circular saw jig. So, as you can see, let's unplug this for effect. 25 minutes. Man, you guys are troopers. I owe you all some cookies. So as you can see, and you'll see this in action when I do the build for my wife's musical, probably in January or February. You'll see some more videos of this in use. But this goes right up along the side, and I've got a perfect track. Oh, it's just seamless. So now I can line up any mark with this, or just make one tiny hash. And since this is a perfect 90-degree angle here, I can just set it up perpendicularly across a sheet of plywood, and we'll be set to go. And I can clamp on both sides here. I made it thick enough for some of my biggest quick clamps. In fact, I've got probably 3/8 of an inch on either side left, which is good for me. And of course, I have to clamp it downward like this, just because of how the motor hangs over a little bit onto this. I don't want it to get too in the way. And if it does, I have different clamps. And that's that. So, friends, I thank you for taking the time to watch this video. It was something different. Please be sure to let me know what you think of it in the comments section below. Do you want me to do more long videos like this? Do you want me to do these long videos with a timer, but edit them? You know, I'm up for anything. But thank you for taking a chance on a new kind of video with me. So, yeah, that's that. And, you know, while you're here, I've built about 10 other jigs up to this point. You can check out the Jigs and Sleds playlist. In fact, that's going to be at the very end of this video in these great new end cards that YouTube has created. But before you leave, be sure and do yourself a favor and subscribe. I've got over 150 videos. There's lots here for you to see if you're new. I've got a Patreon account too if you'd like to contribute directly to what you see here so I can build more great things in 2017. So, until next time, bye! Ha ha ha!